opposition. Well, who's going to stop it? Who's going to protect Nehemiah? Who's going to protect the people? Using wisdom. And he's saying, well, I am the cupbearer. If there's any opposition to king, they will come after me. And what will I do to refuse them? Ezra wanted to rebuild the temple. Nehemiah wants to rebuild the walls. And you can imagine an outsider looking at that thinking, that looks like a defensive move. So if there is opposition, would they not come after him? Right off the bat, what do we see in Nehemiah chapter 2? Well, I think it can make hasty judgments, especially when we don't know the details. It should caution us. Caution means don't go to social media when you're not quite sure of what's going on. We can have two different decisions being done in the right way. That's where Nehemiah begins his investigation. As he leaves with letters and an army, the king's army. He arrives, and what do we learn? Perhaps he's getting to know some of them. Who are you? What is it like to live here? He only knows what he's had reported to him. You know, Nehemiah's never been to Jerusalem. He's not from there. He has never seen the city with his own eyes. His entire life has been lived in exile. So he has no idea this city in which he has just descended upon. That tells you something about a vision, doesn't it? So wrapped up in God's promise to his people that I've never laid eyes on the exact city. And yet for months I will pray and ask God's hand of blessing. And so Nehemiah, he sees the city. He begins talking to people. Remember, he is a cupbearer, not an engineer. And so he goes out. You get the geography here. There are different locations within Jerusalem, and there's differing opinions of where in Jerusalem they, in fact, are. But what Nehemiah is doing is he goes on a secret midnight tour, you might say. He doesn't tell anyone what he's doing. He's got a couple of people, perhaps a horse or a donkey. He's riding, and he wants to go see it with his own eyes. Standard city, and he doesn't even see the whole city. Perhaps only half the city based on its location of what we see. But he's got a first-hand experience now, an account of when we say Jerusalem has been ransacked, that the walls are down, they have been destroyed. He sees with his own eyes. It's powerful, isn't it? Perhaps some of you have experienced something like that before. Do you remember back in August of 2005? That was the destructive storm of Hurricane Katrina. Maybe you saw news shots. If you remember correctly, those people were displaced for months, some even forever. They never went back. Some came to Georgia. In 2006, I took a spring break trip down to New Orleans to see it. And I want you to understand what you hear and what you see from a TV versus what you see in front of you. Hard data. It's drastically different. Words cannot describe the destruction of those homes. You begin asking questions. I see these weird markings and paints on the house. What does that mean? And you begin to find out it's lives. You go into the homes and you see their possessions destroyed. I distinctly remember walking into a house and thinking, what was here? There's this black line and I don't understand. And they had to explain it to me. That's where the floodwaters were. And it was at the top of the roof. The house was entirely underwater. You remember those images, the smells, and it changes what you think. It gives you a clearer, a fresh understanding of what's actually happened. And that's what Nehemiah has done. He's heard the reports. He's talked to a couple of people. But with his own eyes,